All right, welcome to a special edition of Florida Focus, a college football podcast. We are honored to be joined by Eric Adelson today. Eric is a writer and philanthropist, formerly of Yahoo Sports and of ESPN. Eric, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's great to be here, Brandon. Thank you.
Well, we wanted to start off today with this special episode. Just give you the floor, Eric. Would you be kind enough to tell us about the efforts in Central Florida that you are sponsoring and how our community can get involved?
Yes, thank you for asking, and thank you for donating, too. I'm a member of the National Diaper Bank Network. I live in Orlando, but the National Diaper Bank Network is nationwide, and we support banks all over the nation. 1 in 3 American families struggle to supply diapers for their kids. And that was before the pandemic started. So it's more now. It's more of a problem now. And I read about the furloughed workers here in Central Florida. And if you've been to Disney or Universal, Harry Potter, or Disney Springs, or if you've celebrated Halloween in the Disney area, then you probably benefited from the work of the hotel staff in Central Florida in some way. And they are hurting now because a lot of them, thousands have been furloughed, and they line up every weekend, Saturday morning for food. And I've noticed over my time at the National Diaper Bank Network and just being a supporter of diaper banks here in Florida that where there's a need for food, there's always a need for diapers. And a lot of times when we get hit by a hurricane or some other natural disaster, a lot of people rush to donate food, which is great, or donate water, which is great, but people don't really think to donate diapers. So I went down there 3 weeks ago on a Saturday morning and just dropped off some diapers that I had for an emergency. And fortunately, we haven't had a major hurricane this year yet. So I have some extra diapers. I gave them to the furloughed workers and the Unite Here staff. And some of them are actually not only out of work, but also volunteering to help those who are out of work. And they said that there was a great need for diapers. So every week since then, I've been bringing what I had, going to Target or going to Walmart or going to Publix and buying some diapers or Winn-Dixie and just bringing them down. And it's not much. I mean, these are hundreds of people, and a few boxes is not a huge donation. But for the family that is trying to get through the day and trying to carve out as many dollars as possible for their groceries, diapers do help. And I found that out this past weekend when I went down there with 3 boxes of diapers, and literally by the time I dropped them off 10 feet away and got back to the car, they were gone.
Wow.
That's the need. And so at that point I was like, okay, well, I feel like I can do more and I can get the community involved. And so I made an Amazon wish list of diapers and a variety of sizes and even some wipes on there, and put on the wish list and put it on Twitter. And thanks to allies like you, we have some diapers coming. And so I'm going to keep this going as long as it's needed. Unfortunately, it's going to be needed for a while because Disney laid off, or furloughed, I should say, thousands of workers yesterday. And this problem is still getting worse before it gets better. And so as long as there's a problem, as long as I have the wherewithal and the support to give, I'm going to go every Saturday morning. And thanks to people like you, and hopefully maybe a couple of listeners that you recruit, we'll keep it going. It's really not much, but when you don't have a job and you don't have any visibility on the end of the week, everything helps. And so I'm happy and honored to do my part.
Excellent. Well, it certainly ties into the hurricane prep like I never even realized. And so I'm glad that you have the awareness, and that's obviously the goal with our community. I'm certain we can contribute more. And so how has the turnout been so far, the donations wise? Do you see an uptick? Is there room for improvement?
Well, I mean, the thing is that there's always room for improvement. I mean, no donation is too large to solve the problem because there's such an immense need. If you have kids or have anyone who know anyone who's have kids, you're spending $40 a week per child on diapers. And if you're getting by on the poverty line is $2 a day. I mean, you can do the math. So there's no amount of donation that's too big, but there's also no amount of donation that's too small, in that if you don't have to worry for a morning because you know where your diapers are coming from, then there's less stress on the mothers, less stress on the father, less stress on the child. And so I think a lot of people, when they're asked to donate, they think, well, I'd like to donate $50 or $100 or $150, but I just don't have that much money. We're in a pandemic. $3 makes a difference. Every diaper costs 27 cents. And so if you're donating $3, then math was never my strongest suit, but that's something that can get a family through a day, and that can protect that money so that they can buy something at the dollar store or just buy a meal for or formula, which is another unmet need in this situation. So as long as I am here living in Florida, there'll be a need all over Florida, and I will be trying to help with it. But there is a great need, and it's greater in the pandemic. Unfortunately, it's greater when there's a natural disaster. Mm-hmm. And the laws, and I don't want to get too political, but I think it's important that here in the state of Florida, Rogaine is tax exempt, but diapers are not. And that, I think, is something that is a little bit off, because if Rogaine is considered a medical need, then why aren't diapers? And I think we need to reevaluate the importance of diapers, because you just can't get through. You can't put your child into daycare without diapers. And if you can't put your child into daycare, you can't go on a job interview. You can't go work on a regular basis. If your child is in pre-K, they have to supply their own diapers. The schools don't provide it for them. The daycare doesn't provide for them. And so I prefer to look at diapers as an economic engine, that if you have that one part in your engine as a family, then that helps you get through the week and then build on something for the future, or at least as a stopgap until you get back to work, as these hotel workers are doing. So if you've been in a hotel, if someone else has cleaned your toilets, then here is your chance to give a little bit back to people who have taken care of you and you never even knew their names.
How about that? And you can pretty much give anonymously. I think you've done a great picture, Eric, of painting the picture of what this small thing can do and the trickle-down effect it can have. So I appreciate that. Where this is the website you would send people to, and we'll post it as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's at the top of my Twitter feed, which is Eric, ERIC _Adelson, ADELSON. So it's at Eric _Adelson. And then you could just email me. I mean, I make my email address public, and for something like this, it's really important. And that's just Eric Adelson at Gmail, ERIC ADELSON. So if you're interested, just reach out on email, and I'll send you the link. And I'm really grateful for the people who've already donated, including you. It really just makes my day to help. And just again, this weekend, Saturday morning, get there at 10:30. They're turning away people because there's no food left. And then they see me pull out a box of diapers, and one of the families that's not able to get food on that trip says, "Oh, I'll take some diapers." And you can just sort of see, the brief glimmer of happiness on their face when they have something that just soothes them a little bit, that they provided. And I know that a lot of people think of diapers as sort of a mom's issue, and it is. It definitely is. But it's also a dad's issue, because it's part of providing. It's part of caretaking. I mean, dads don't nurse. Dads can give the bottle, but there's sort of an intimacy with a mom and a baby that is sometimes hard to replicate with a father. But if you can change a diaper, you're doing something for your baby. If you can bring home a diaper or a box of diapers, you're doing something for your wife and the mother and the baby and the family. And at the very least, keeping them clean and keeping them happy. And so a little thing like that really goes a long way when you're worried about, when am I going to get back to work? How am I going to get food on the table? How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to pay for air conditioning in the Florida heat? A lot of things are on your mind. A lot of things are causing you anxiety when you lose a job, even temporarily. And if you or I can soothe a worried mom or dad for a couple hours, then that's something I think we should all do.
Absolutely. So I'm glad we found this effort, and we'll continue to promote this on a regular basis. And like you said, there really is no end to the need, but there's just times it's more on the front of mind, I guess.
Yeah, and the other thing, I don't know if people sort of realize this, is that it's a need on campuses too. I mean, I know we both want to segue into sports and talk about the Noles and talk about the Gators, but there are food pantries on campus for not only the students, but also the staff. And that's not something you want to talk about if you're a college student, right? College is supposed to be the best years of your life, and a lot of people feel judged if they're poor or can't afford to go out and get a meal with friends, or they have kids of their own. And a lot of staff members, I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Florida. I'm comfortable, but I also know that the salary for adjunct professors and teachers, TAs, is tiny. And so you're relied on to be a full-time, accessible educator, but the compensation for that is often too small to have sort of a working class income. And so on campus, there are opportunities to give either food pantries or diapers. And so I do that at the University of Florida. Next time I'm in Tallahassee, I'll do that too. Do it at the University of Central Florida as well. But if you're not a parent, if you're a college student or just a football fan, and you're like, well, this isn't something that really speaks to me specifically because I'm in my 20s, I'm in my late teens. It's still something that is happening around you, that there are people who are in need in your dorm, on your campus, in your class, and they're not going to come up and talk to you about it, but it's there. And so one thing you can do in a very graceful and dignified and effective way is give to a food pantry on campus. So next time you're on, and it's not that far from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, I mean, a short walk is the food pantry for University of Florida. And I don't know exactly how far the food pantry is from Doak, but it's there. It's around you. And it's something that you may not see because it's often hidden, but it's there. And so if I can just get everyone to keep that in mind, then I feel like I've done a little bit of my job.
Well, that's great that resource is available. And here's to hoping that any kind of stigma associated with that will be by the wayside.
Exactly. I mean, I've written about student homelessness, which does extend to college level. And I wrote a story actually about a star athlete, high school athlete in Michigan. He was like the homecoming king, and he was, tall and handsome, and everyone loved him, most popular guy. And he was homeless, and nobody knew about it because it's not something you talk about it. And it turned out that in his homeroom class in high school, he was sitting next to another homeless student, and they went the whole year without even knowing that the other one was homeless. I mean, it's really hidden well on purpose. Teachers are not allowed to out someone, which makes sense. You're not allowed to ask. You're not allowed to know. And so there's a pretty good chance that if you've been on a college campus, you've interacted with somebody who's maybe homeless or maybe food insecure. And if they have kids, that's another extra level of pressure, economic pressure. And I think we've all learned this year that none of us are too far away from economic hardship. None of us are too far away from losing economic stability or a salary or just a future that we know is there. And so if you are among the people who are okay, and if you have a few dollars to give, and it really is a few dollars, then you can lift up someone's spirit.
Yep, can't put a price tag on that. And it's in the Orlando area. It's been comforting to know that the schools were still supplying meals as they were doing when school was in, during this time, especially March on. And, sometimes that's the only out somebody has from their home, whatever situation they're in.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And the other, I mean, if you're high school, you can go to school and pick up if you're Title I school, you can go and pick up the food that you would normally get in school. But then there's a lot of people who don't have the transportation to get there, or they don't want to get on a bus because of COVID. And so there are sort of extra layers of poverty that you don't see. When you have a stay-at-home order, it's hard to stay at home when you need to get the food, but then it's hard to get there to get the food. And again, my students at University of Florida, and again, I don't know. It seemed like they're doing okay financially, but I don't know. But more than half of them are not in Gainesville. They're at home. And so if the pantry is something they're relying on, they can't go there. And that adds another obstacle. So that, I think, reinforces the need for diaper banks and food banks in their area to pick up the pace and pick up and help as much as possible. But when I'm in communication with them, and I'm in communication pretty much every day with diaper banks all over the state, from Miami all the way to Panhandle, there's an overwhelming need that there hasn't been before. And they don't have major staffs. It was funny because I was talking to Senator Rubio's office, and I was trying to explain to them what diaper banks do. And one of the staffers was asking, well, how do you pay the people who give out the diapers? Well, they're not paid. It's purely volunteer. So when you're a volunteer and you're also a mom, which almost all of these people are, you got to make the time to make the difference. And that's another, they don't have time to go on social media like I do and say donate. They don't have time to do the fundraisers and the diaper drives the way I might. And so my part is not necessarily to actually hand out the diapers, although I guess now I'm doing that too. But my part is to say, hey, if you're on social media, I want you to just know about it. And then the next time maybe you're walking through Target or you're walking through Walmart and you're like, I don't need diapers myself, but maybe I can pick up a box, or maybe I just go on this Amazon wish list and help somebody, because I can tell you for sure that the need right now is as great as it's been since the Great Recession, and maybe greater, because, I don't have to explain it. You guys, everyone knows what's going on in the world and it's in Florida, and it's time to make a difference, even if it's with a few dollars.
Excellent. Well, we are glad to be a part of it and let our community know how they can give it. And thank you again for painting the picture there. I wanted to ask you, kind of transitioning into some of the sports questions, you had mentioned the story about the homeless kids in Michigan, but just from your time reporting college football, what is the biggest lesson you learned from a team or a coach in the state of Florida?
Oh my goodness. Oh man. Sports wise or life wise?
You can go either way.
Man, that's such a great question. I should pass that along to my journalism students. Well, I think that the last year, was it last year? I don't even know what year it is anymore. Maybe it was this year. Several months ago, I did a story on Immokalee, Florida, which is actually produced there during James. And this is in the Everglades area, not too far from Naples, Fort Myers. And there's a high school team there, Immokalee High, and they were in a rural agricultural community, and they were living under the fear of ice raids. And this has sort of subsided since then, but at the time there was ice raids going on, in Florida and in Texas, and there was the fear of ice raids. And I did a story on that team that was dealing with not only trying to play football, but also trying to stay in the country and not be deported, regardless of their citizenship status. And in the United States, you are entitled to an education no matter what your immigration status is. So talking to the coach there, you really get a sense of, it's not just getting them to think about football, it's getting them to concentrate on the things that are in front of them rather than the things that are overshadowing them. And I think one of the hardest parts about coaching, and honestly, I feel this a little bit as a teacher too, as a professor, is that you never really know what somebody's going through, and it's your job to give them space to go through that, but it's also your job to understand that they have to go through it, and that can interrupt the learning and coaching and teaching process. And so I think one of the most important things that I learned, and I bring it to me when I'm writing about athletes or just viewing athletes. When we watch the Gators this weekend, you sort of expect them to be perfect. Don't drop the pass, don't miss the snap, keep the field goal straight. But when you've got a divorce going on in your home, or you got some level of economic insecurity, or you've got some illness with a family member, you take that to school, you take that to the field. And fear and trauma is something that you can't just put on the Bose headset and listen to Drake and then forget everything.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that I try to keep in mind when I'm watching a game, and keep in mind. But in terms of the state of Florida, in terms of sports, I mean, this is really nothing new. But you got to have a quarterback. I mean, James Blackman. I think everybody loves James Blackman in terms of his effort and his devotion to the cause and how much he's been through with all the different offensive linemen, all the different coordinators, all the different coaches, all the transition he's been through, and just standing there and taking those hits, taking those shots, and standing up there and shaking it off. I mean, I just so admire. That's so hard to do. I drafted Cam Akers on my fantasy team, and part of the reason was just like I was so impressed with how he went through the gauntlet of his Florida State time, and now is drawing a pro paycheck, which I think is great, good for him.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a quarterback that can sort of erase the mistakes and erase the flaws of people around you, then it's gonna be a long season for you, and especially in Florida, because I mean, you look at UCF and you look at UF and you look at Miami, and they have quarterbacks that erase everybody else's mistakes. And I have so much appreciation and admiration for James Blackman, but it's hard for him to do that right now. And you can sort of see this sort of cascade of trouble that happens every time he gets a snap. And a lot of players at the high school, college, and pro levels, a lot of quarterbacks are able to just sort of make that go away by making the right decision.
So given the take about quarterback play, and I think I agree with Blackman being there, how do you see the Knights, Gators, Canes, and Knowles season playing out the rest of this year based on what you've seen so far?
Well, I sometimes see Kyle Trask on campus, and he's built like Cam Newton, and I don't say that sort of in a hyperbolic way. I mean, I've covered Cam Newton. And the way that he's sort of so solid on his feet is something that's so important that I think that physically and also mentally, with his background, he was never guaranteed anything, and he's never sort of this entitled 10-star athlete coming out of school. I feel like that's grounded him almost literally, considering how stable and solid he is on his feet. He's truly grounded, and I think that that's something that will help when they get into the meat of their schedule. And so I like to troll people on social media talking about, because a lot of my followers are Gator people, and my wife Andrea covers she went to school at UF and she covers the ACC. So it's fun to just sort of, poke fun and talk about UCF winning another national championship and all that stuff. But the thing is that Florida now has, I think they have depth on offense and weapons on offense that they haven't had before. Now UCF has it too, and Florida, I think they really miss C.J. Henderson. I mean, you could see what an impact he's made in Jacksonville. I think that's missing in Gainesville, and they have to figure that out, because if they go against Dylan Gabriel, he's going to make them hurt. But I just feel like now finally Dan Mullen has levels of talent and levels of depth that he had before. And I kind of feel like that gives the edge to the Gators if they were to meet up with UCF.
Excellent. What about, let me phrase it this way. What about college football in the state of Florida sets this state apart?
Oh, man. Well, I think that I think it starts in high school. I think that in high school there's so much energy. It comes from so many years of rivalries, and there's energy that's tied to place. I mean, if you go to a Friday night game in Jacksonville, it has a different feel than a Friday night game in Miami, which has a different feel with Friday night game, the Glades. There's a different feel from Friday night game in Orlando. But if you mix all that up together into one state, you have both variety and sort of the sameness of this almost desperation to win, and rivalry within the state. And I think that bubbles up to the college level, that these guys all know each other on some level if they don't actually know each other. And that makes every game, every interstate game, and even the non-interstate games, really intense. And you sort of see it every time Miami plays Florida State or UCF plays USF, where it's just like gloves are off and the passion is high, and it almost doesn't matter what's happening elsewhere in the state, elsewhere in the country. It matters what's happening here. And then you have the Georgia, you have this sort of national epicenter of college football that almost all of the national championships are within a 5-hour drive of Atlanta. Florida State, Florida, Clemson. And Georgia hasn't won one, but they've been there. Auburn, Alabama. They're all in this area. And when you combine that with recruiting and you combine that with the college of excellence, and also, let's face it, you combine that with a lack of NFL greatness. I mean, we have had a dearth of NFL stories for many years. I mean, Miami hasn't won a playoff game. I can't remember. Tampa hasn't won a playoff game since I think they won the Super Bowl in 2002. Jacksonville, they had that one run, but then that's back to the dregs. The Falcons look bad. So one aspect of this is like, this is the NFL. College football is the NFL in our world. And I think that's part of why college football is back, is because, as much as we love to watch NFL, it's really the pinnacle for, in this area, in this region, is college football. And now Kirby Smart's brought Georgia back. Clemson is higher than they've ever been. South Carolina is kind of much more respectable now. North Carolina is coming back under Mac Brown. And then Mullen's back. UCF is a new power. They're not going away. Miami's finally turning a corner. You have overall more talent in this area than there's ever been. And then one more aspect, I think, one more layer that I think is important is you have Northerners who are moving. I'm one of them. I'm a Yankee. Move down and sort of contribute in their own way to the vibe, whether it's picking a team, whether it's just being a part of it, whether it's sort of understanding the culture and the depth of the history. And so you have more and more people demographically moving down I-75, moving down I-95, and being a part of this world. So you really have a neat combination of deep rivalry, deep roots, and a new growth of fandom and talent and finances that you haven't had before.
Fantastic synopsis. I mentioned earlier I grew up in Texas, but I've had ties to Tallahassee my entire life. So sometimes it's kind of migratory in that way. A question for you, Eric, here. How will sports fans remember this season 20 years from now? I've seen comparisons to like 9/11, Spanish flu, World War II. What do you think we take away from this 2 decades in the future?
Well, I think that we don't know yet. I mean, I really try to encourage my students to say, I don't know. I know that's hard to say on Twitter. It's hard to say on social media. It's hard to say in person. But, no, we don't know yet. I mean, if there's a major outbreak at one of the SEC campuses and it shuts down, that changes the answer. Now the NFL went from, wow, this is great, it's working, this feels almost normal, to, shoot, Titans and Steelers are not playing on the scheduled day. What does this mean? So we don't know yet how this is going to be remembered, if this is going to be successful in terms of the rebirth of sports this year. But I think there's a reckoning. I think there's a reckoning of sports. I think that we will remember this as, for many years, the rich got richer. You have, 6-figure strength coaches. You had 7-figure and sometimes 8-figure head coaches. And you had these, waterfalls and water slides and bark loungers and TVs and locker rooms. And I don't think we're going to have that for a while. I think we're going to have a very few elite, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Floridas, maybe a few others. But we're in the midst of a reckoning. And I think that college football and sports in general already has a little bit of a different place in society than it did. I think that the life and death of sports is now replaced in some way by the life and death of life. And I think that that's important perspective. And I think we're talking about it a little bit here too. It's just like, if if I'm just me personally, a year ago, I didn't wake up on a Saturday morning and be like, okay, I gotta go and donate food to the people who are lining up for food. I woke up on Saturday morning. I was like, okay, I'm going to turn on game day, and where are they this week? And what's the funniest sign I'm going to read? And who's playing? And there's some of that. That's important. It's important. I don't want to play it down, but I just think that we as a society are going to have a different perspective on sports than we've had before. And that's going to be the hallmark of this generation of sports fans and media. And I think you see a little bit in the social justice movement. You see a little bit in the pro anthem and the protests. You see a little bit in politics. I mean, even President Trump is saying that he helped bring Big Ten football back. That's a political issue now. And I think that when I grew up, with sports in the 80s, and Michael Jordan and brands, and that was a transformation from who's your favorite team, to who's your favorite player. And I think that you get to this generation, and it's like, who's your favorite player? Who's your LeBron? Who's your Michael Jordan? Who's your Giannis? Who's your Luka Doncic? And now I think that there's going to be something else, some difference in how we appreciate and value our athletes and our coaches. And I really think that there's going to be hard discussions that are in recruiting living rooms. I really think that Dabo Swinney is going to have to go into a living room somewhere and have to answer, why did you say what you did or not say what you did about social justice, or Mike Gundy, or Lincoln Riley, or Nick Saban. There's a lot of hard conversations that are had in public, but also ones I think we're going to have in private. And I actually think that a lot of students or prep athletes are going to weigh their decision on where to play based on what's happening right now. How much do they take care of the students? How much do they protect their students? How much are they concerned about the safety protocols? And so we're in a transition as a sports society, but I don't think it's going to be the same. I don't think it's ever going to be back to normal. Honestly, I think that's healthy because we all love to escape, but it's never been an escape really, and it shouldn't be seen as a complete escape. It's a partial escape, and we deserve it and need it as people who work hard and people who earn money and people who care about their families and care about societies. And I don't want to play that down because it's therapeutic and it's helpful to talk about sports and have fun with it. And I continue to do that, and I always will. But I also think that once you get into the reality of where a lot of these athletes come from, the sacrifices they have to make to get on the field, and their uncertain futures. What does a degree mean now? What does a scholarship mean now? Those answers have changed. And I think that the more we're aware of that, the more we appreciate the game without taking it for granted.
Fantastic perspective. I did have one last question for you, Eric. I know you're quite a storyteller. If you had an audiobook made, what would the story be about, and who would your narrator be, but you can't pick Morgan Freeman?
Is this about me?
The story could be anything you want, yeah.
Oh, man. Well, it's probably Coach Taylor on Friday Night Lights. There's nothing in my life that's cool or that gritty. So it couldn't be about me. But, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, actually, and I don't necessarily know that I would pick this particularly, but it comes to mind, and, talking to you and with your background, the Florida podcast, is like somebody like LaMarcus Joyner. Like LaMarcus Joyner, he had a lot against him just to get to school every day. I mean, he had to take several buses just to get to school every day. And his mom was very, very poor. And I think did hair on the side just to earn money to get him to school. And he had a chip on his shoulder. I know that that's sort of a cliche, but if you watch him play, and I know you remember watching him play, sure. The way he hit, the way he pursued the ball, there's a true desperation there. There was a real either anger or stridency or resilience that drove him to make the tackle and make the play. And it's still there. And it was kind of neat to see him play. He's now the Raiders, and he's 5'10", right, 5'11", and to see him in this the Death Star of the new Vegas, with the lights of Vegas and this $1 billion facility, and there's LaMarcus Joyner coming out of a harsh, uncertain background, made it to Florida State, led the team in his own way, led Florida State to one of its greatest heights as a program, made it to the NFL, has stayed in the NFL, not a big name at that level, but a big playmaker. Still going up against guys who are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", still making the play, still bringing that desperation of his childhood, and I really appreciate that in him, and I'm cheering for him. And I haven't talked to him. I wrote a story on him years ago, and I haven't talked to him since. But that kind of energy, I think, is contagious, and it's leadership, and it's something that I think we as a state should be proud of, but also aware of, because not everybody has that path that LaMarcus Joyner has. And for all the rest of us who are here and don't have that path to the NFL, but still have that energy, still have that grit and drive, we still have to support them. We still have to be aware of them. We still have to make their dreams as accessible as possible, because we may not watch them on television, but we have to support them. And that's the story that I want to help tell in my own way.
Fantastic. Well, Eric, thank you again for your time, your great insights, and for all of the great articles that we've enjoyed over the decades that you've written for numerous people. It's been a pleasure talking.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. And I appreciate the podcast, and continued success to you.
All right. Thank you.